No, it was quiet. I mean, just summer in general is not too deep. Safety officer. There was like half of people. Crazy call. It's just, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I'm only 2 blocks away, so it's not too hard to get. The doors on the right were locked. I'm like, oh, I was gonna have to go around. I'm gonna be late, but.
No, the next ones were open, right? Yeah.
All right, we all. Yeah, we wanted to scare you.
Make you get your extra
15 blocks,
steps.
That extra 15 feet.
Okay, we're just getting ready here.
Yeah.
We'll be starting in a moment.
Oh, like, no, whatever. I think maybe sometimes waiting for the bus, they come in through those doors.
Oh, all-star game today.
When, yeah, that's right. I'll just introduce the fact that we didn't meet. You got it, yeah.
Yeah, that all the recommendations are in, so you can just make those motions and.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
You ready then? Oh, okay. I was waiting for like the wink or something. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Tonight is the Common Council meeting. Today is July 11th. The time is 7 p.m. The notices were appropriately posted. I will ask for the clerk to take the roll call, please.
Mayor Kim Smith,
Here.
Sean McAllister.
Here.
Dan Stevens,
Present.
Stephen Knott,
Present.
Leanne Stokes. Here. Larry Jurassic,
Present.
Diane Wolf.
Here. Thank you for that. Please stand and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 3, the rules of the Onalaska Common Council and its subcommittees. This is a harassment-free forum. City council and subcommittee meetings shall be conducted in a courteous manner. Citizens, council, and committee members shall be allowed to state their positions in an atmosphere free of slander, obscene remarks, or threats of violence. Sufficient warnings may be given by the sergeant at arms or the chair at any time during the remarks, and in the event that any individual shall violate the rules of decorum as set forth, such person may then be cut off from comment or debate. Item 4 is public input. This is an opportunity for anyone to give input to the Common Council. If you would like to do so, please begin by stating your name and your address and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Would anyone like to address the Common Council this evening? Second call. If anyone would like to address the Common Council this evening, now is the time to do so. Third and final call for anyone wishing to address the Common Council. Not seeing or hearing anyone, so the opportunity for public input is now closed. Item 5, report from the mayor. I have included in your packet a copy of the proclamation for National Pollinator Week that was issued earlier last month. I think it was in June. So there it will be recorded. Next up, recommendations for approval and or possible action from the following committees, commissions, boards, and officials. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member requests removal, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in the order of business in the non-consent agenda. Are there any counselors that would like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Not seeing or hearing anyone, I will then entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Stephen Knott. It's been seconded by Larry Jurassic to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I,
Those opposed say no. The consent agenda is approved unanimously. Moving on to the non-consent agenda, a recap of items pulled from the consent agenda. There were none. And now in respect to people that we have in the audience, I'd like to go ahead to item 10, which is a matter from the Park Rec and Library Board. And I will turn it over to Larry Jurassic.
And I'll turn it over to Dan.
Thank you, Dan Wick. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So at the park board meeting, we went through the different pathways that we've been working with ISG on for the plans for renovations to the community center. I have Ryan and Adam here tonight to walk through the kind of the pathways, very similar to what we did at the park board level. As we get started, if there's any questions, please ask them. And then, we can have more further discussion at the completion of their presentation. So I'll turn it over to Ryan and Adam at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. And gentlemen, can you please start by stating your name and your position with your company so everyone knows who you are? Welcome.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you, everybody. So I'm Ryan Welke with ISG, a project management group leader and project manager for the Onalaska Community Center project.
Good evening. My name is Adam Voth. I'm an architect with ISG working on the architect side of this community center project.
We can skip ahead to the next slide, if you will. I'm not sure who's controlling the one more. So appreciate allowing us time here tonight to present. So really kicking it off with the shared mission. So we have been spending a ton of time with Dan and team and really working with the city's staff with the end in mind. And with that, developing our mission statement for the project. What are we doing? And I'll read it. So to maximize the Onalaska Community Center potential to bring people of all ages and abilities together to socialize and play and connect year round. So really establish that mission statement to develop our design, our guiding principles around design and really thinking with the end in mind. So as we kind of go through the agenda, keep in mind kind of our mission statement, guiding principles as we walk through some of those plans. So tonight we'll go through project status, where we're at, where we're going, our guiding principles that I had mentioned, some site context. I know everybody's familiar with where the Onalaska Community Center is at, but kind of helps with our mission of our end in mind, pathways to success and really our concepts, and then our pathway comparison, kind of showing where everything pulls together. So where we're at, so as we mentioned, we've been spending a lot of time with Dan and team to really get us to the point we're at today of the council meeting. So we started off with that project kickoff meeting, establishing our mission statement, establishing what our guiding principles with keeping the end in mind and where we're heading. We moved into the master plan development. So under direction of the city staff, really, what is master plan? Where's the Onalaska Community Center want to go with the end? And then what can we do with the funds available? And then we dove into the option development that we'll present with you all tonight, and is bringing us to the to the council meeting, and then our next step really determining what is our scope for the Onalaska Community Center going forward. So our guiding principles, and I'll kind of go through these quickly, but under inclusive, welcoming, user experience, multi-purpose spaces are really those guiding principles for us through design and option development. So move into inclusive, and really with inclusive, our really main goal with this and focus was around accessibility for the space for all users, and adoption for more of a multi-purpose room. So making sure we're accessible for all, including like the ADA accessibility restrooms, family restrooms for use. Guiding principle number 2 is really that welcoming, drawing people into the community. I know when we first met with the team, something that really stuck out to us is making a legacy project for the city of Onalaska. And how can we make it a legacy project, you know, not only within the users space within, but also of how it appears along the street. So really these welcoming, visually pleasing, but then as you come into the space, is it welcoming, have folks to greet you, easy flow through the space. Guiding principle number 3 is really our user experience. So we want to be able to improve user experience, really create easy access throughout the space. So that could be controlled access for different renters, controlled access for different users, you know, upgraded to AV equipment, larger new storage spaces, and really improving that traffic flow overall, but then allowing those multiple spaces to be used all at once. And then our final guiding principle is creating those flexible spaces to be able to use for the seniors, to add additional programming to the Onalaska Community Center. So I know a lot of our ISG team is in the Onalaska community, so excited to see something continue to pull together, and as their kids grow up, be able to use the space as well. So now we'll jump into the fun stuff, run through the site context. I'll let Adam take it from here, but as we go through the few different concepts, the budgets that we do have noted are a total project cost. So we looked at construction costs and including soft costs, so design and other things that would need to take place as part of facilitating that project. So just something to keep in mind as we look at some of those costs, they are total project cost and not just the construction.
Perfect. Thanks, Ryan. So for those who perhaps aren't as familiar with the overall site context, really from the start, working in concert with Dan and the city staff to develop that vision, it became very apparent that the mission of the community center certainly reads through not only as we dive into the building stage, but as well as at the site context, serving as really that central hub of activity for the community, not only for all ages, whether it's senior meals and county nutrition, as well as adjacency to the nearby schools, but as well as servicing all activities from the future all active playground to the weekend activities happening at the ball fields to weekday Zumba classes, as well as all times of year, understanding that this facility is an active part of the community all year round, not only during the week, but on weekends as well. So as we move from the site context down to the building scale and understanding what our options were in terms of renovation to replacement to expansion, if we continue on, working with the team here at the city, we started to develop distinct pathways, what we're calling pathways for success, using the principles really to guide that process, as well as designing, continuing to design at an evolving scale to keep that end in mind. So as we walk through each pathway, our end goal was to develop that good, better, best option, both from project scope to project cost, so that we really can see all of the available options on the table. So we're going to start with pathway 3. There's going to be 3 pathways in 5 different permutations. Hopefully that will soon make sense to you. Pathway 3 is shown as a scope to align with the original project budget. Each pathway will have the concept on the left with some key the concept on the left with some key principles to the right. And so looking at that concept plan, really the focus on pathway 3 is renovation of the interior. So taking a look at the existing and understanding what our key priorities are and how we can really focus the funds available within that existing 3,200 square foot building footprint. And so what's shown in green would be existing condition. What's shown in orange would be light to heavy renovation. Some of the most important key focuses of the project are the accessible restrooms. So that became a high priority in terms of understanding that heavy renovation was needed there for accessibility, not only for all ages, abilities, and genders, as well as understanding that the user experience at the interior, there's ripe opportunity there. So including some light renovation to the multipurpose space. Moving along to pathway then number 2. We've split pathway 2 into 2A and 2B, which I can provide a bit more context. Right now, we're showing pathway 2A, 2B as a blue would represent the existing footprint of the facilities. That would be renovation of the existing facility as well as expansion and addition shown in green. And so we're showing a 1,900 square foot addition. These considerations and keeping in mind those guiding principles along the left there include number 1 would be really leveraging that inclusive and welcoming space, having a vibrant and accessible entrance to add prominence and identity to the community, as well as a reception area, central lobby, and a spine that starts to organize the building programs as a whole. Point 2 starts to point to the inclusive and user experience with the addition of bathroom facilities that can meet not only the needs of the existing facility, the expansion, as well as the site as a whole, including restrooms, single user restrooms, accessible both from inside and out. Point 3 speaks to the user experience, understanding that this multi-purpose space gets a lot of use now. So what are the opportunities to not only expand the footprint, as well as having the opportunity to divide the space into a more flexible manner, having concurrent activities at the same time. There'd also be opportunity for within the existing renovation for having a more welcoming experience. And this is just an example of some cosmetic upgrades that could be made, like removing some panels in the existing wall to allow not only natural day lighting to the space, but as well as draw a connection from the inside and out. And then the last point I'll get to, and all of these points are further defined within as we develop these options, is again, relates to the user experience of having an expanded kitchen facilities, not only to serve the multi-purpose spaces, but then also as we think about an inside-outside connection, allowing space for concession stand to happen within that site as well. So if we move to pathway 2A, you'll see nearly identical to pathway 2B. The only key feature is that in this option, we're replacing the existing building footprint and building entirely new. We wanted to have the opportunity to provide that apples to apples comparison with the caveat that with a new building, certainly the spaces could be rearranged. It could be rearranged on the site. And there's opportunity to not have to work within that existing footprint, but being able to show them apples to apples, as I said, is helpful in terms of understanding what you're getting with each one associated with the cost. And then attached to site, attached to pathway 2, we also are showing showing a site concept with some mild improvements would be associated with pathway 2. That would include parking restriping, accessible approach, as well as the drop off, and the total numbers of lots would be increased from 30 to 36. Moving along to pathway 1. Pathway 1 is again similar to pathway 2, split up into pathways A and B. So as we start to think of the end in mind in terms of developing how these pathways build upon each other, you'll see that pathway 1 does still utilize in blue the existing footprint, as well as that initial 1,900 square foot expansion, as well as a 7,000 square foot gymnasium. And so really this was developed as sort of the ideal future master plan for the facility, having a gymnasium with size for competition courts, practice courts, tennis courts, and pickleball. Not only would expand the services and programs that the city provides, as well as some anticipated indoor and outdoor storage. And then similar to pathways 2, we also have a pathway 1A, which includes a total replacement of the existing building, and then showing a new 12,000 square foot facility. So associated with that, between 1B, 1A. Further down.
Next sentence.
Yeah, so also site considerations and improvements would be taken into account with pathway 1, not only meeting the needs of pathway 2, but also expanding the parking area in order to accommodate and increase capacity to the facility.
Yeah, and then, so a couple things to just note with the concepts we presented to renovation. When we're talking renovation within the existing facility, that could be some flooring upgrades, ceiling, painting, redoing some of the fixtures within. So just keep in mind, we'd improve the restrooms, but then within that multi-purpose space, there would include some renovation, just means improvement of, like I said, flooring, ceiling, paint, some of those types of things within those spaces. And then what we have up on the screen here really is those pathway comparisons, and looking at pathways 3 through 1, the features as we look at the guiding principles and what we're able to accommodate within those different pathways. So really just a comparison. You can see 1A kind of checks the box for everything, and then moving down the list. So that's really where we build. End in mind, 1A is that master plan that we developed and work backwards from there. And then what you're able to get in option 3 with the funds available, but each one does build upon each other.
Okay, thank you. Counselors, do you have specific questions before we get to the next? Larry Jurassic?
Yeah, 1A and 1B, you got the square footage for 9,250, and then on 1A, you got it 12,550. But the design is basically the same.
Larry, that's because we're renovating the 1. The 9,000 is new addition. We're renovating the old space. That's the difference in the 2.
Thank you. We had talked at Park and Rec before about an upper deck for the gymnasium area. Is that going to be?
We haven't done anything to that point because we're just really in concept planning.
Okay.
These are just concepts, trying to get a direction that we work off of from a concept standpoint. Then we can hone in on that. Would come in plan development and things at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Alder Stevens?
Thank you, Your Honor. Dan, I thought from the past, I heard that the kitchen was an area of concern, that it's utilized a lot with Meals for Wheels, and I see that we're really only get about a 12% increase in the kitchen. And I see the lobby is kind of taking up a lot of space. Is enough to do what we need to do?
So the county nutrition meals come prepared for them. So they're not cooking meals on site. And right now it's kind of in the open area there. So we're trying to designate an area for the kitchen. They'll have storage and stuff off of that. That would all be kind of dedicated for the county nutrition program.
So you believe 300 square feet would be sufficient?
I
for what
believe
our
so,
needs
because then
are?
they would be serving out of that. Right now, that's all in the open room. Right now, they have a dishwasher, a small stove is really the only appliances that they have, in as part of the kitchen space.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Amanda?
I just wanted to pause a second and let you know that we do have Brad Bagut on the line as well. So if we want to talk the finances and what bonding could look like, he is available to discuss that with us.
Okay, let's see if we have just specific questions about the sites and then we'll listen to Brad. Stephen Knott?
Yeah, so in both the ones and the two options, the difference is demolition, new construction versus renovation existing. What is the difference in the life cycle of the building with renovating and demolishing and going to?
As far as like which one would just which building like would last longer? Is that like?
Well, obviously the new will last longer, but I'm wondering is by how much? I mean, what are we predicting that going with, for instance, an option 2A versus a 2B is one example. How much more life are we going to get out of it for the extra in this case? I'm going with top end figures, by the way, because no one ever, I mean, on one hand, the number that comes in on the low end. All right, so what for the extra 1.3 million, how many more years are we getting out of it?
I would say a big part of the cost of going all new is you are demoing the whole existing building. So I'd say from a life cycle comparison, it's not a big difference because we would take into factors of as we're renovating new space, we are going to want that space to last. We wouldn't want the community to come back in and have to do a replacement in 5 years of what we put in there. It is relatively the same. I think a lot of the different factors that go in of kind of doing the good, better, best with materials starts to build out that lifespan of the building.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's go to Amanda first.
Well, I think Jared can speak to this, or if one of you wants to jump in. I know in speaking with our inspector, he had mentioned that a new building would be much more efficient long-term, and there are certain, I guess, pros to building new over old and then just sort of trying to retrofit. So when you say we're renovating, like, are we replacing all of the HVAC? Are we taking it down? Like, what would be left of the old building? If somebody could kind of talk about that.
Yeah, no, good question. A lot of the, I would say a lot of the shell building would be remaining, and part of this exercise, we'd always also go in of what HVAC equipment and stuff is still available and evaluate what the lifespan is left on that. But to your point also, if we are building new, a lot of new materials are much more energy efficient than they were when the building was built back in the 70s. But there would be a lot of pieces to evaluate, but most of it would be right down to the shell, if you will. So the structure itself.
Just one other comment with that. I think we would also look at, if we built new, we could leave the current community center probably sit at this location. We could look at putting the new community center towards the back of the parking lot that's there, kind of the plans that they had, and flip it and use where the gymnasium could come out front. So then we wouldn't displace, the current users and things of that facility, that they could go and, we could build new and then demo it as we got to that point after we had the community center, the new facility built.
Okay. Let's see, any other staff want to chime in something, Jared?
Yeah, if I may, one thing I would point out, it really, if you keep the existing building, I would agree that they could take it down to the shell. I still think that trying to get a ADA compliant building and getting it to the point with all the mechanicals and everything, it just, we've done a few of these projects over the years, and it just you never get what you want to look the way you want it when you're done. There's always something that when you walk in the door and it looks like it's cobbled because you come through the door. Now I can totally see like renovating the school, for instance, a very large building. So you have a lot more options with what you are able to do. This is a relatively small building, so you don't have as many options for moving things around and as many aspects as that. And, obviously our consultants are going to do a great job of trying to make sure it lasts that span of time that we're trying to get out of it, but it's a 50-year-old building. Its useful life is really been taken care of, and it really has, I look at the lowest option is heavy maintenance. We're doing heavy maintenance. It's not even a renovation. It's heavy maintenance in my mind. So, we're just going to have so many more options. As far as if we get into the design phase and we keep the existing building, if you've been in that building, very few windows. Well, now if do we make the decision to cut 3 new windows in because we want that natural light in, and the consultant goes, well, our budget only allows us to cut 1 in. Now, if we're building it new, we can maybe do that and still keep it in the budget. So those are things that I look at when I'm looking at this.
Okay, so staff is good. We'll go to Stephen then.
Yeah, it's not a question on the building per se, it's a question on demand. So this would be towards Dan. Out of all the existing gymnasiums in Alaska right now, there's a lot of schools with gymnasiums here, both private and public. Is there more demand than we have availability? I mean, the gymnasium is something new.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, we could probably build 3 gyms on this location and be filled 7 nights a week.
So they're having to turn folks away at the school.
Yes, they are.
Okay.
And we're struggling to get in. We're getting turned away
Okay,
because of activities and things going on.
thanks.
Okay, any other questions before we go to Brad, Leanne?
Yes, if we do decide to tear the building down, what plans do you have for the seniors during that time period?
Well, I think ideally we would look at, if that's the way we decide to go, I would look at building the new facility on the back side, build the community center. And then if we can do the gymnasium, do the center first, then we could tear down the current facility and then build the gymnasium like that. That would be the ideal. These guys might shake their head behind me and say there's no way, but that would be the way that we could stage it and make it work so that we wouldn't really displace them. The other thing we look at, that facility is used 7 days a week. And so, when we start planning out, we gotta look a year in advance and start telling people, okay, it's not available for use. We have to move our programs to different locations and things like that. So, that would be in the ideal world for us. It would be to keep the community center in current location, build it in the backside of the lot. Yes, the parking and stuff will be, a problem for a short period of time, but then we could demo the site and bring the parking more out to the corner on Quincy.
Okay, so if you have more questions, can you just jot them down and we'll let Brad do his spiel and then we'll come back to questions after that. So I'm not trying to stifle any questions. I just am respectful of his time because he is present online.
Brad, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. You want to just sort of jump in and talk a little bit about, we had a conversation with you, I think it was last week, maybe just the highlights of that, what our financing options are, would it impact our bond rating and all of those fun things?
Sure, I'll do that. Thank you. And just for everyone's, by way of introduction, Brad Vigut, I've been serving as the financial advisor for the city for some time. So, as I understand it, this might be a $6.5 million total project cost with a borrowing amount in the range, funded through city debt in the range of about $4 million. So the most typical approach to financing this type of a significant infrastructure improvement that has a long life is through a general obligation bond issue, typically up to 20 years, which is the maximum allowed under state statute. That fits in nicely with if you've got a new building, for example, with replacing the one that we're talking about tonight that might have a 50-year life, you're extending the repayment of this debt over much of that, a good portion of that life of the asset. So the question, I think, naturally would come to, well, what does that mean for the city's bond rating? I mean, the city has been very diligent in limiting its debt issues to roughly $3.7 million annually to fund its capital program. And the city has a strong bond rating, a AA2. As I look at layering in, say, a $4 million financing in addition to your 3.7 roughly of annual capital financing, we're going to get Moody's attention. They're going to make a note of that. But as I dug into your debt profile a little further and again, look through some of your finances, issuing that debt in and of itself, in my opinion, is not going to have a negative impact on your bond rating. It's not going to trigger a downgrade to a lower rating. That said, I would just remind everyone that debt is only one factor that Moody's includes in their analysis for, assigning bond ratings. So if there's other factors that change, to the negative, things like the economy in the city or median household income, or if the city were to draw down its reserve funds, or a year after this issue might be in place, the city decides to fund another significant project like new library, new pool, a police, something like that. Any of those things in conjunction with this could have a negative impact on the city's bond rating. But just the snapshot in time, adding this piece in and of itself, I wouldn't anticipate a negative outcome. Procedurally, we would go through the same process for the debt issuance, where finance committee would review a plan that's developed, probably put together 2 or 3 plans and come to the committee with a recommendation. There'd be initial approval by council and then finally the award by the council. So in a nutshell, or a brief summary, I think that's what I would report out regarding the bond rating and a couple of options for debt issuance. I'd be glad to answer questions if there's any specific questions or to go into more detail.
Thank you for that, Brad. My first question, you were referencing if we were to borrow $4 million, what if we were to borrow 6.5 million? Does that affect your comments?
Yeah, there's not like a hard and fast dividing line where I can say at this dollar amount there's a negative impact, and at a smaller dollar amount there's not. It's really it's going to be a gray area. So the higher, the greater the borrowing above the $4 million, the more of a potential negative impact this could have on the rating. I just can't answer at what point does Moody's would this trigger a downgrade. There's just not a hard answer that I can point to on that. What I would say is that, that to the extent we can keep this closer to the 4 million, I do feel a lot more confident about that.
Thank you, Brad. Amanda has a comment.
I just wanted for clarity, the reason Brad is giving the 4 million number is that when we spoke with him, we had posed the scenario of the city borrowing 4 million and then fundraising the additional amount for the gymnasium. So we still were anticipating funding a total package of 1A or 1B, but looking at borrowing for 4 million and fundraising for 2.5 to 3 million.
Okay, thank you. Okay, staff, any other comments? Sabrina?
Thank you. So the other thing that I'd just like to add is I know Brad and Amanda and Jared and Dan and I sat down and chatted. We'd likely borrow this over 2 years. So it'd be like an additional 2 million for next year and the following year. So just kind of a heads up on that. I think I feel confident in that, in our cash reserve balances, that we'd easily be able to handle borrowing it in 2 chunks, being able to keep up with construction costs and things of that nature. So.
Okay, and we have done that before. Does that work with the timing of this project?
Yeah, in talking to Ryan and Adam, and they can jump in, I think, we get a direction that we can start moving down. It's going to be in 2024, but we look to bid this project out. So it wouldn't be construction probably till the 3rd, maybe 4th quarter of 2024, into 2025 that we would do the project. So I think it does fit in line. That's why when we had Brad on the phone, that's why we were looking at that sort of a funding mechanism to go forward.
Okay, Aldernaut?
Yeah, just a comment for us to consider as we continue with this discussion. the bigger we go, there's potentially a hidden cost of more staff requirements. So if we go for the 1A or even the 1B, understand we're gonna have to find another 100,000, whatever, on an annual basis to hire more people. I'm just guessing on that number, but it's gonna be, certainly I would think in my mind would be at least $100,000 to hire an additional 2 or 3 people. So that's something that we know right now we do not have in our budget. So we just need to keep that in mind.
Did you want to comment on that, Dan?
Yeah, from a programming standpoint, I see that we would need to have somebody in that location. Now, cleaning standpoint, but like we're doing with this building, we're using, part-time staff to do that. I think that would be the same thing that we would look at there. So wouldn't be near the 100,000, cost. There would be some additional cost from a cleaning standpoint and things as we go. Now, if depending on how the program grows, yes, we may come at a later time because the building's so, busy and we have so many new activities that we may need to look at that.
Okay, Sabrina, and then we're gonna come back to Diane because she had wanted to say something before.
I apologize. Dan, there would also be revenue, correct? Like what would you anticipate in revenues? Would that help offset some of the employee cost?
Yes, there would be. I mean, from a program standpoint, most of those staff costs would be covered by, programs that we're running. That would be, again, we're very early into this stage. Once we kind of get a direction, then we can start looking at programming time and spaces like that and, rental fees and things like that can come back to the facility.
If I could just add to that, our childcare program is currently at the Omni Center and it's in a banquet room, which is not the greatest location to have children for 40 hours a week. And so that's a program that could potentially move to this. It brings in a fair amount of revenue. If we can provide the staff, we likely could expand that program as well, which could bring in significant revenue as well. So I do think there's a lot of revenue potential with those larger options.
Okay, and Diane, it was gonna be your turn.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I have kind of a list of questions. So
There's an echo.
Or is it you?
Okay. Is this better?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So I have a number of questions. I'll lead with, excuse me, are we looking, is it an absolute that we come to a decision this evening?
I think we're at the point of where we're, what we need direction on where we go from here. Yes. We've got to this point. Ryan and Adam have done what we've asked. They've given us, these different pathways. And so we need direction on where we're going to move forward.
Thank you. And the reason why I ask is I know that, I know staff has met with consultants and I know that this was just recently presented to the Board of Parks, that a couple alders, I think half the council was there. But this is the first time that we've actually done some deep dive. And we've talked about it a little bit, last December or whatever, when we were putting money aside. But my concern is being in a real hurry, and I'm not trying to drag this out, but I just think I'm always hesitant to make really important decisions when this is the first time that all of us as a group have everyone together to make a decision. So, but I'm certainly not looking to try to hold anything up. One question I had for Sabrina was, how did we fund the initial budget of $580,000? I can't remember, how did we borrow for that or what did we do? Because I know it changed.
Yep, we did borrow for that.
Okay, thank you. So Dan, I know in a good decade ago or so when my mother was still alive, I know I accompanied her a handful of times to the senior nutrition site at Quincy Street. And it used to have a really big attendance. I heard from someone just recently that attends it quite often. There's only 5 or 6 people attending it right now.
I would differ from that. Now, it may depending on different days.
Okay.
But I think if you go by there's usually many cars. If we go in there, we've been in there a few times with the consultants and there's 15 or 20 people in there that we talk with.
Okay.
So I can't every day, I'm not up there taking attendance every day to see.
Okay, sure.
So-
I was just wondering. So Stephen stole my thunder about the increased staffing, but yeah, I totally agree. But, and it would be like you kind of touched on, it's kind of like with the camping program, and then you had all this additional income, yet you had additional staffing, but yeah, your income, your revenue really blew up, which is a really nice thing to see. So, I think that's all I have right now.
We'll come back.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so, Sean, you're gonna be next after Jared. So Jared has something he wants to say, and then I'm gonna see if Sean wants to say anything.
So a couple things here. One of them, you know, I just, I feel I really need to talk about the capital improvement budget in general. You know, going into this next 5-year capital improvement plan, we've seen prices on public works infrastructure, parks projects, Omni Center projects, City Hall, facility upgrades go up exponentially over the last year, 2 years. So we're gonna be going into the capital improvements budget, and we're not gonna have as much buying power with what we've been borrowing. So that's just one thing to keep in mind, that once we get into the capital improvement budget, once we start in September, we're gonna start displaying and showing some numbers and things that are gonna show that to you. On the flip side, I've been here long enough. I've been involved, not as much with City Hall, but just starting with projects here. But I go back to, we were very fortunate. We had visionary leaders back in the early 90s that really thought about our City Hall. I remember being in the old City Hall 24 years ago and sitting in almost a closet. That was my office. And we had 3 of us in like a room that's the size of my office now. And we were very fortunate. We're still utilizing this building, and I think we've gotten a lot of use out of it. And there's a lot of life left in this building. You've got the pool in 01, 02. You got the public works facility in 2006, 2007. You got the library in 08, 09. You put the storm lift on Main Street in 11 and 12. You did well number 9 and 15. Those are all major infrastructure projects, building projects that now we are living that legacy of. That's great for our community and makes it part of our community. So I just want to point that out too. So.
Brad, if you're still online, can you talk a little bit about how historically we use approximately $3.7 million toward our capital improvements and how that compares for other cities of our size and I guess rating, keeping the AA2? Is Brad still there? Brad, are you still on? Brad? We can't hear you, Brad. She's working on it. He's got his hand up.
Brad, we can't hear you for whatever reason.
Oh,
He was going to be driving, and so maybe let's just give him a chance to get off and get back on.
okay, sure. So Sean, did you have any questions or comments?
Well, it looks great. You guys did your homework and come with a very nice package. So thank you very much. Looks great.
Okay, Leanne?
Just so that I understand, when Amanda was talking about doing the fundraising aspect for I believe the gymnasium area, are we going to, if we would pass this and everything, would we start the project and then also start the fundraising, but not do anything with it until we get to the point where it's going to cover that 2.5 million?
Right, I think that's what we're looking at, you know, by staging the project like we have, we can start construction, we can do a portion of the building. If the funding comes in, then that's where we would look at doing that.
And when we talk about fundraising, you know, really, we mean we're going to go out to our community partners. We're going to look to the county. We're going to look to other, you know, businesses. We're going to do grants. I'm not talking as much about like, let's go do a GoFundMe and I mean, we would happily accept that, but we're looking more at a business type buy-in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll come back to you soon, but let's give Dan a chance.
But a lot of my questions were actually for Brad. Maybe Sabrina looks pretty smart, so maybe she can answer that.
Again.
So I guess my thoughts are if we're gonna do something like this, we should do it right. I do have concerns based off of what my understanding of the bond markets are right now. We're talking about borrowing money, and I don't know that the rates have been higher in the last couple decades. I'm not sure what benchmark they're looking at. In the past, I've kind of harped on, you borrow aggressively when the cost of funds are cheap. And now we're kind of on that flip side. We were talking about this $580 or $580,000. I remember advocating strongly that if we're going to make this happen, we need to boost that up more. And now rates are significantly higher. If, like the regular market, we're looking at $4 million on a 20-year note, if the rates were about 2.5 points higher than the last time we did a large project like that, the interest cost is probably going to be maybe $70,000 a year or so more, and that we have to pay out of our regular general fund budget annually. And that's that's a salary. So I have concerns that I want to see this happen. My question is now the time? I think that when we're talking about prime bank rate hikes, I think we're close to they're talking, they may have another one, but I think we're close to the apex. If we're not looking at borrowing right away, a little bit of time, 6 months may make a big difference in what the cost of borrowing funds is going to be. I hear Jared's point that cost of materials is a concern too, but a 20-year note is something we got to pay on for 20 years, and that there's other capital projects that are necessities. So
Dan, let's let Sabrina break in and answer some of these questions, and then it can still be your turn, but let's have her while she's thinking of.
So I think Brad might have gotten back on. He is trying to get back on. But just a couple of things in what you mentioned in regards to the borrowing, it would not affect our operating budget. It would affect our capital borrowing. So when we talk about our levy of what we receive, we have an operating levy and then a capital levy, and we can borrow up to $88 million to hit our max for our borrowing for the city, like due to state statute. So if we were to borrow an additional $4 million over 2 years, the interest costs for that would affect our capital budget. So we can raise that without having to go to referendum or anything of that nature, as long as we don't get up to 88 million additional dollars. So that does not affect our operating budget.
But the payments for those payments as we make them, so
that does not affect operating.
It would
We
go
get
straight
a
to the
separate
Right,
levy through our.
but it's from the levy that the money still has to be paid, is my point.
Correct,
that
but
would
through
be-
capital, it wouldn't go against our operating costs. So it wouldn't be part of that like net new construction of how we can increase our operating levy.
So this would increase our capital levy. We are able to increase our capital levy.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, if we were to borrow the, say, $88 million, not that we're going to, what would that do to the average tax bill?
That would do a lot, 88
correct.
million, correct. But
My point is that we have to pay for it, and
correct, but it won't affect our operating levy. So like we wouldn't have to find $700,000 in our operating levy, because we could borrow the additional amount in our capital levy.
So there could be a slight increase in property taxes.
can we if Brad's here, can we quantify that?
Well,
Like for 100,000, we would expect on a $4 million general obligation bond.
I mean, typically, like on one of our $3 million bonds, typically our interest is usually around 100,000 a year. And on a taxpayer, that would be next to nothing on a property tax bill. $100,000 on a, we get our total levies 15 million. So that's,
And do you believe that that payment would be similar, like the last time we did the $3 million bond? We think that the rates would, and therefore the payment would be similar?
I think so, yes.
Brad, are you able to hear us now?
Yeah, I can hear you. I came in partway through the conversation. I don't know if there's some kind of technical problems, but yeah, before I would want to start, talking specifics on numbers, I would need to model this out for the city. I don't want to necessarily just, put a number out there and then if people get attached to it and then I come back with a different number. So but I certainly can, do the modeling of that. But if you like, there was a question asked and, on how your annual borrowings compare to your, peer communities. And that's where I sort of got lost. What I'd started to comment on that in response is that you're right in line with communities of, the similar credit rating, similar population valuation. In fact, it's a real common approach for cities to try to pay off more in principal than they're borrowing each year. Just as of, with the exception of these significant one-time projects. But for your traditional capital projects, it's a practice that a lot of my clients follow. So for example, in 2023, the city paid over $4 million in principal. And in 24, your budget is paid just over $4 million. So you can kind of see that you're currently issuing less debt than you're retiring each year. So that's actually bringing down your overall debt margin when you're comparing that to, say, the property values in the city. The city's property values have grown at better than 7% annually from 2018 through 2022. So that's helping with some of the metrics that the rating agencies and frankly that the investors are going to look at.
Thank you. Let's see, we were with Dan still. It was still Dan's turn.
So Brad, if some of the older debts were being paid off more aggressively and we're replacing them with newer debts, I'm presuming, but I don't know this as a fact, that the newer debts, if they were taken out in current markets, would be at a higher rate. Would not our weighted average cost of capital be a little higher, or would that, like, how much difference are we looking at? Am I splitting hairs? Are we talking like 3% and now it's going to be 3.2, or is it, it used to be 3 and now it's going to be 5?
Yeah, I think 4 might be the number. I mean, if you want a number today where we're at, you're closer to 4 for a 20-year, and that's where we were back in the spring when the city issued you're just under 4. But if I'm looking at your debt file here, and I'm going back, you have an issue from 2011 that was just retired or it will be in October, and that's at a 4%. So rates ebb and flow, and we've been in a long period of a very low interest rate environment, and now we're seeing that wave go the other way. We're not going to be in this environment forever. The rates go up, rates go down. We put call features on all of the city's bonds so that if rates go down, we have the option to prepay and potentially lock in lower cost of financing for a refinancing. So there's a lot of options we'll build into any financing package.
Okay, I can live with 4. I was thinking it might be higher, and that was my concern. So
Brad, another one of my questions was, we had talked about just using the $4 million as just like a conversation piece. Spreading that over 2 years, doing 2 million in 2024 and 2 million in 2025. Do you see that as being a distinct advantage or not really?
I think it's an advantage. Yeah, I don't know. It's going to show prudent planning, but we're going to be forced, right, with Moody's. We're going to tell them at the outset that, look, let's use the $4 million project, but we are funding it over 2 budget years. But so when they start running their forward-looking analysis, they're going to factor in $4 million. But it's still, if it fits into the timing of the project construction schedule, it's a good approach. I would have a different opinion if the city wasn't in the market each year, because then there's some inefficiencies, but because you're borrowing annually, we would just add this onto a component of your other financing, your capital financing.
Okay, thank you. Dan, did you have another question or are you good now for the moment? Okay, now it's Larry's turn.
I was gonna ask the same question you were, basically, I thought we'd do 3 and 3 and make it 6, but if that's a possibility, or even 2, 2, and 2, extending out another year that way too, so it's just another option, but since we're planning at least 2 years to build, that's a possibility.
Okay, thank you for that. Staff, did you want to say anything right now?
I like Larry's idea.
The 3-3.
Just add another 3 after that too.
Okay, Stephen Knott.
I just want to clarify what I believe I heard when Leanne asked a question. So what I'm understanding is hypothetically say, okay, Common Council approves 1A. What we're actually going to be borrowing against is 2A, and then we're going to be pursuing other financial revenue sources beyond the borrowing to get to 1A.
That is what staff is proposing. What we would like to do is pursue 1A, but we would like to fundraise for the gymnasium.
Which is the difference between 1A and 2A. Okay.
And I think just to echo what Amanda said, we would be creating documents for 1A,
Sure.
knowing that we have that, we can do it. in
Architectural
phases.
design will include the complete
Correct.
structure. I got it.
Correct.
But it would, the initial construction with this hypothetical, 2A is done. 1A's design is there with its architectural design, but we're looking for money. Okay.
Okay, open to anybody's comments or questions. Diane.
Thank you, Your Honor. So back when when we had to replace the pool, the very leaking pool back in the late 90s, the Onalaska Pool Committee was originally formed in 2000. And there's a lot of discussion at that time about the possibility of having partners, having private donations. We all know where that ended up. It all dried up eventually. It took several years, unfortunately, and we didn't end up opening until 2005. And city ended up borrowing, I believe, $1 million 1 year, and then the second $1 million, because it was a $2 million project the following year. And it turned out to be very successful. I am encouraged with the possibility of grants at possibly asking the county, possibly private donations, but I would just like to go on record to say I would be very cautious to make any assumptions that any of this money will materialize whatsoever. I just like to be very realistic. I'm also concerned that we have another project in front of us. As someone who very much, and I've said from day one, I very much am behind this project in some form or fashion. But we have the Rural Park redesign that's been put on the shelf. The boardwalk is still hanging out there. Now the community center, now the long range planning committee just met this past week to talk about a 15-20 year long range plan, the comprehensive plan. So I just have concerns that there's a lot out there, and I realize that we have to pick and choose of what are we going to do. And I'm encouraged with, and I appreciate Jared Holter's remarks about legacy projects, because that really is, I think that's what we're here for, to make those decisions based on the community. That's why people vote for us, to put us in place to make those decisions on their behalf. And now there's talk about, could we maybe do something with the Omni Center? So again, I'm just concerned that there's so many things that we'd like to do, and then it's a matter of picking and choosing. So, but that's my main concern, is that we have so many, what I believe, very worthwhile projects on the back burner. And I'd also like to see them eventually materialize. Thank you, Your Honor.
Let's go to Amanda.
I think those are all very valid concerns. I think the one thing that we have going for this project that not all projects have is, especially still coming out of COVID, there is a lot of grant money available. And a lot of that is directed at vulnerable populations. And this will serve two different vulnerable populations. It will serve our seniors and it will serve our youth. And so I think that gives this project a little bit of an edge where not all other projects have that. Dan and I also spent an hour, actually, I don't know how long Dan spent. I spent an hour. He spent, I think, quite a while on the phone, looking at the possibility of federal funding if we were to make the gymnasium a safe room and an emergency shelter. And there are FEMA dollars set aside for that. That would require some reworking and very specific architecture design, but that's something that we are looking at as well. That would be a 75% match from the federal government if we were to get that. With a 25% match commitment from the city. But there are options out there. The hardest part right now is that until we commit, it's really like we don't meet the necessary requirements to even ask for that money. And so by committing to at least the initial phase of the project and that 4 million, that we will already have met most matching requirements. We'll have committed to it. We'll have started to actually get design work, and it makes making those requests a lot easier.
Thank you for that. Dan, did you want to add on to that, or did she cover everything?
I just want to kind of echo, I think what you're leading to, Alder Wolf, is what Jared was getting to. You know, our buying power is in a capital improvement. So we're having to make decisions because 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we were still borrowing 3.5 million. Today, it's not the same number. And so that's why we're having to make all of these decisions. This is a legacy project that it comes around every 25 years to do something like this, but just our operational trying to move some of these other projects forward is because we don't have the funding to be able to do it.
Thank you. Alder Knott, and then Leanne will be next.
Yeah, so comment and question. First off, yeah, really good comments, Dan. Do want to, the reason that we're going to have all these projects though is because the staff is doing their job. When you have a vision, the vision is not going to be overly constrained by resources. You're looking at what would we like to do, and you'll always have projects out there. So that's actually a good thing in my mind. We just have to make the decision on what we think we're going to fund at any given time. So we're talking $4 million borrowing. Just clarified that the difference between 2A and 1A, and just going on them, it would be 2B, 1B similar, is that difference is going to be by pursuing grants and other fund streams, what have you. So it's still 3.6 million. We've already borrowed 580K, correct?
That is correct.
So where is the 4 million coming from? Because that's still only getting me down to, I don't know, 2.2, 2.3.
So when we were looking at these plans, if you look at like 1B 6.5 or 6.8 in the middle, we were just coming back saying 4 million. If the city would come up with 4 million, we would raise the other portion of it. So we didn't look at the 580 that we had collected. We were just looking at the big number at the end.
So you still want to pursue the 4 million, or you want to go for the 2.2, 2.3? That would be necessary in this case for a 2A raising funds.
Me personally, I'd like to try to get to the 4 million.
I feel like you misunderstood.
I probably have.
Okay, so Amanda, maybe describe the funding plan. Like, I think the funding plan was based on going with 1A. The
Correct.
strategy. If in order to achieve 1A, staff developed a strategy for how we could achieve it. It combines the money previously borrowed, an additional $4 million, and private fundraising to fill the gap.
So that's, I'm just going to round off. So 4.6 million, in which we would still need to get another 2.9.
On the high end, yes.
Well, it's going to be the high end. I'm just
Trying to be optimistic.
out of all the decades I've worked with stuff like this, I count on one hand when it's come down on the low end. Yeah. All right. So the 4 million is part of the plan. So you want 4.6, I know it's 4.58, 4.6 now, and then the rest we pursue through other means. Okay, got it.
But within that 4 million, 2 million would be borrowed in 2024 and 2 million would be borrowed in 2025.
That I'm tracking.
And whatever the number 580 or whatever it was already in the hopper.
Mayor,
Okay, any questions, any comments? Jared?
I would just say also that obviously trying to estimate costs right now for our engineering projects, our maintenance projects, obviously the consultants here do not want to hopefully promise you a building and then be short. So with today's environment, I'm hopeful that we've seen some progress in prices leveling off and maybe even retreating slightly. So I'm hoping that depending on what we come up with, we've have enough funding in the project. And maybe we can see this will be the 1 out of 5 because we've had to elevate things. You're going to see this in the capital improvements program overall when it comes due in another couple months that we just don't know. And this is the first year in probably the last 20 that I can remember in our city capital improvements program where we really didn't have enough money to get the projects done that we had in there. Because the prices just elevated so sharply, so drastically that we were just tightened to the point where we ran out of that room. So I'm hopeful, and it's very tough that our consultants here are staying in a very difficult position because we haven't decided yet, if Jim, they want to have some room in there where Dan comes back and says, gosh, we really want 6 basketball hoops instead of 4. They've got room for that, or we want to put in a nice floor for pickleball or something. We've got those things that they've thought about and we've discussed in these meetings that I think hopefully there's room for that. So I'm hopeful that we've got the right funding and we're going to come out in a good way.
Okay, so just to kind of summarize, because it's 8:10 now, and I know I want everyone to have their chance, but so I feel like based on what I'm hearing from the staff and from the council, that really what we need to decide conceptually today is, number 1, do we want to move forward with the project? And number 2, if we're going to move forward with the project, do we want to fully fund it and not have a gymnasium? Or do we want to try to fully fund the base and use fundraising to achieve the gymnasium? Is that correct, staff? Yes. Okay, now we'll start again. Let's see. I feel like I start over there all the time. So I'm going to go to each counselor once. If a staff person has something they want to say, raise your hand. We'll start with Leanne. We'll do like a crossway. So we'll go Leanne, Sean, Dan, Diane, Larry. So everyone knows when your turn is coming. Okay. And if I mess up, remind me. Okay, Leanne.
Okay, the one thing that I just wanted to mention is that Brad at one point had said that he wanted to do some final calculations and he didn't want to give us a true number until he's actually done that. And I really would like Sabrina to work with him because I think the best thing we have going for us is that we have, really quality people in the people that are advising us. And I think we need to lean on them too for their expertise. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Sabrina, did you want to reply to that?
Yeah, Brad and I will definitely discuss if we are going towards the 4 million. Brad and I can have some conversations and I can show you what that will look like, especially as we go into the capital budget season, which will be coming up. The only other thing I will say with that, I just caution you and remind you that the past few years we've been using ARPA dollars. So those are gone. So I'm going to be pushy as to, I don't want to go above 3.75 and all of the staff over here are going to yell at me because they want to go to that 3.75. But being in my position, I wouldn't advise going above that. Granted, it's your decision, but it wouldn't be my advisory to go above that on top of the additional 2. So then we're at 5.75. So that, I would not go above that.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, Sean. Sean's good. Dan.
I don't know that we've really talked about this. So with regards to the big question is the gymnasium. That's a lot of expenses tied up in there. Is there any reason we can't 2-stage this? Because if we redid the building, the community center building by itself and did it right and did it the way we want, modernize it, new ductwork, I think we could probably afford that on one bonding and then you know, rates go down, supplies go down, you know, 2-3 years later. The gymnasium is off on the side. So if you're gonna do a separate building, you don't really have to upset the apple cart on the community center. So that might be a more affordable way to approach this. And then the second thought I had, and Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the middle school is getting a new gymnasium in the Boys and Girls Club. So we won't control that, but there's usually partnerships with the school district. 75% matching, you know, FEMA money, that's really attractive. And I think there's a need. I think it would get used. I'm not sure that it's a kind of like a core need, and I'm hesitant to, you know, add an extra million here, an extra million there. Eventually it starts adding up and you got some real money. But I do think that in terms of a legacy project, I mean, the next thing that we should do, I would love to see the Roe Park redone. I would really love to see the boardwalk done. But I think out of everything that we're doing for the people that get served and how this building is utilized, I think next up on the list really ought to be the community center. So maybe we just look at the building, and then, I mean, if there's a reason why it makes sense that we are better off doing it all at once, I'm all ears. But financially, this seems like it would be a lot easier pill to swallow. Would it not?
Okay, Dan, did you want to respond to that?
I mean, yes. I mean, when we started this process, that's why we put in the segments, these pathways, because of it, you know, giving you that option, knowing that, yes, if we just do the community center, then it gives us options to look at it. I just don't want us to be short-sighted, to give us the opportunity to look for some grants, to look for some partnerships that we might be able to create to try to get the gymnasium done at one time.
But we could build the gymnasium 4 years from now and
Yes,
add on to the building without it being too upsetting to operations of the community center.
And that's why that master plan is done this way, knowing that if we have to, we can phase it in.
Okay, that's all.
I think Amanda wanted to comment.
I mean, I guess I was just gonna say, we could definitely do that. I think the downside is, to Dan's point, is that, you know, we do think there likely is some grant money available, and even under this approach, we're not likely building that gymnasium in the next 2 years. That's gonna be built in year 3 or year 4 anyway. And so even if the city did have to fund a partial payment towards that, because we didn't raise the full amount, if we could get halfway there, or we could get, you know, 2/3 of the way there, and then the city's only paying 500,000 or $1 million for that gymnasium as opposed to almost 3, I think that's still a win for the city, and we likely could still bond for that because we'd be doing it in 3 to 4 years.
Okay, Jared?
I think another thing from an engineering standpoint, even if you told us today that we'd fund the whole thing and borrow it all, I would still, from project management standpoint, we'd bid it with an alternate. We'd bid it with building A, as you stated, and the alternate B or alternate A after the base bid would be the gymnasium. So we could bring that back to the elected officials and show, okay, we gave you a project budget. We got really good bids for whatever reason. It was a good day in the bidding world and whatever, and it came in great. Or we come back and say, we just can't afford it because it's something else changed in the world that we didn't anticipate. So, but no matter what, I would be telling our consultant that you should bid it in 2 phases anyway. It's just a matter how we put that all together and timelines and all those things. But that would be, we will do that anyway.
Okay. Dan, are you good? Are you?
Good.
Okay. Diane?
Thank you, Your Honor. So I appreciate, Jared, you adding that, because I know that's how you bid so much of the stuff, and you know, that's something that I could support moving forward. But I'm siding with Alder Stevens a little bit on this, as far as kind of take a slow as you go approach, but I appreciate the adding the bid as an alternate. I'm going to reiterate, you know, this is really the first time that this is before us as a council, and we're talking about a legacy project. And I just question the rush and us the possibility of us making a decision tonight. And I don't think that we should have to make a decision tonight. If you all want to make a decision tonight, that's fine, but I'm just gonna express my concern about making a decision. Again, it sounds like staff's had a lot of discussion and phone calls and such, but this is the first that we've actually had a really chance to talk about this since we originally funded that 580,000 last December, I think it was. So that's my concern, that we just haven't had a chance to this all through, and I don't think an hour discussion is really enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Jared?
I guess what I would look at tonight, and I think Dan would agree with this, would be we're really looking for direction on what to design. So if we can get forward, because Dan will go back to the consultants and he will have in the next council meeting a professional services agreement proposed from our consultant to design something. So if we know what that something is, then we can move forward with that. And once we get 6 months, 8 months down the road, hopefully we've got a design that we've got maybe toward closer to bidding documents. And before we would bid the project, may we come back and bring it back to the council and say, these are our refined cost estimates. These are the refined schematics. This is what you'll get with your funding, and you make the decision on what we bid. I think that would be the best way forward. I want to get the whole thing designed because I'd want to have it on the shelf for funding reasons. No matter what we're going to do, I'd like to have it designed so that way maybe we have a grant that we didn't know about comes about in 3 months, and all of a sudden we have this. So I think that's a path forward that I see.
Jared, what's the difference in the design costs between including the gymnasium or not including the gymnasium?
Typically, I mean, we haven't got down to that point yet, but you're 8% probably of construction costs typically. Yeah, I mean, 6 to 10, depending on how big the project is and how many amenities and things like that. So if you add the gym, you're talking another, 200,000 probably in design, 150, 200,000. Just and once again, we're being like Brad, we're showing numbers out and we hate to do that because you got to have a scope. You got to have, if we're asking for a lot of different specialized things, it takes longer to design. If all he wants a gym with four basketball hoops with a tile floor, well, that's going to be a lot easier to design. So.
Okay, I think it's still Diane's turn.
Do we know how much we have spent of the 584? As a follow-up question, do we know of the $580,000, how much we have expended to date? Does anyone know? Roughly.
Roughly, it's just the contract that we have with ISG, which is probably 25,000 spent to date. I think is a high number. I just put one in. Yeah, it's less than, I just put a bill in today for it, but yeah, okay. It's like 14 is what we spent to date.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we're just at the beginning.
Thank you.
So Diane, are you done now for the moment? Okay. All right, let's see. Larry.
I agree. It's just the first step. And that's what they want to do is know which direction we're going to go. All the documentation that they put in front of us shows thought, and I like the idea of staging it, especially if we could stretch it out to 3 years, and that'd even be better yet for funding of it. But I'm fully supportive of it because I am one of those aging people, as all of us sitting up here on the board are. And the country's going that way. Everybody's getting older. It'd be great to do the Omni Center, but that's going to be more the younger generation. And we need to look forward to working with something with the senior population. And by doing this project here, it fits all the parameters that I can see. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And Alder Knott.
Yeah, so I think I'm ready, despite the fact that I think I'm the miser. I'm ready to commit to 2A myself, but a comment and a question. First off, if we do go forward with this and this two-stage, single design model we're talking, we need to be very transparent with the public on their own expectations. What we're committing to is 2A. What we're hoping for / pursuing is 1A. So I just don't want false expectations to get out there. If we go forward with this, what we can guarantee is a new community center. We can't guarantee a gym yet. All right. And then the question I have is, so we take out a $4 million bond, which at this point is for a $3.6 million project, of which approximately $600,000 is already borrowed on. So that's $3 million. We aren't able to this is hypothetical. We are not able to raise the funds that we were hoping for the gym. We now have a $4 million bond when we only needed a $3 million bond. What happens to that other $1 million? How are we able to use it? Yeah, Sabrina.
Yeah, so great question. So typically how that works, it would have to be another similar type project. So something else that would be related to like parks and recreation, we could use it for. And if, we did do the 4, we didn't get to, our fundraising goal, the money could sit there for a year or two. And then if we got to our fundraising goal, then we could use that towards the
Okay,
gym.
so it would be.
Oh,
Yeah.
wait a second.
Yeah,
Let's
go
let
ahead,
Brad.
Brad,
Go ahead, Brad.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, there, one option that I would want to look at for this financing is preceding the long-term bonding with a short-term note called a note anticipation note. And that's real common for this type of a project. So with a note anticipation note, you could think of that as almost like a construction loan. That's outstanding during the construction period. Once construction is completed, if we find that there's positive budget variances, you can take the remaining note proceeds and pay down the note, only securing long-term bonding for the costs actually spent on the project. That also has an option or an opportunity to get us further away from the current interest rate environment. We may be in a better interest rate environment at the time that we're locking in the 20-year issuance, which may be after the construction is complete.
Thank you for that, Brad.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone?
Would that be a lower rate then?
Well, we don't, we're theorizing.
Yeah,
that,
no,
but
with
we
the
don't
option,
know what
last
the
option he just gave.
Future
that
rates are
gives-
going to be.
Yeah, the option he just gave likely would be at a lower rate. We don't know that. We can't say like it would be 3 instead of 4, but likely it would be at a lower rate. And then we would lock in at the bond for the long-term note.
Okay, Alder Stevens?
Just kind of an add-on or maybe a request to consider. So the community center that was built like 50 years ago, which is like older than me. That building's been there for a long time. And I know that we've looked in some cases for like alternative uses of energy. If we're gonna have a building with a long span, is that like solar panels or could there be a use that we could have that would help in the long term for, the city budget? I know we've looked at solar panels on other cases, and if it's a short term, the economics just doesn't work. But if this is going to be here for 50 years, and especially if there's a gym, you've got a large surface area that we could employ. If that could be looked at, I would appreciate it. I don't know if that would work out, but if you're going to build a new building, we should look at all the angles.
Right, and we're getting into that. That's the next step, to look at the programming. Geothermal is another thing that we will be looking at, with the space and stuff there. So but that is the next step. Once we get direction on where we go, kind of what Jared said, those are the pieces that we'll bring back and see.
So for direction on which way to go, do you want just like a motion that tentatively we're looking at this? And so I'll what were we thinking? It was 2A with an alternate for
1A.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that staff proceed exploring the option to with regards to the community center down pathway 2A with an alternate of 1A to be further reviewed by council.
Okay, let's let Sabrina, I think she wants to clarify what the motion.
Sabrina's seconding.
No,
I think it would make more sense, in my opinion, but I will defer to the city attorney to vote on 1A with the borrowing of 4 million and the additional being fundraising, in my opinion, but just a thought.
Amanda?
I think it puts us in a better place for fundraising purposes.
All right, so you want me to rephrase that with more options? Or do we need to cite the pathway then, if that's the case? Or we're just saying that we want to pursue a $4 million bond for the community center?
Well, I think they need to know what they should start designing so that they could finalize the plans.
That's what my motion was though, so.
I think we would want to say that we are going to pursue design of option 1A with the understanding that that the city will commit 4 million and that we are directing staff to fundraise for the cost of the gymnasium.
Remaining cost.
All right, I'll make a motion for what Amanda said.
You knew that was coming.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, so the motion has been made and seconded, made by Dan Stevens, seconded by Stephen Knott, to direct staff to proceed with the design of 1A, with the city, funding $4 million of the cost. The intention is that the additional be raised through fundraising. Is that acceptable to everybody? Yes. Okay,
Okay.
so that is the motion. Do we need any more discussion? Dan Wick.
Just to clarify, when we come back with designs based on this motion, we will look at between the community center in the back, kind of the back corner, and then the gymnasium going to current community center is so that we could use both, we could use that facility. And, we wouldn't displace the users of that. So that's what we would look at doing there.
Okay. And the gymnasium, would it be able to be a separate component in terms of bid documents so that we would even right down to the final moment, have an opportunity to back out if needed?
I mean, they're gonna design this the best fit for the land at the best cost, I'm assuming, so.
Okay. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, so Joanne, let's just do the voting by roll call in case there's dissension, so we have clear notation of that.
Dan Stevens,
Aye.
Stephen Knott,
Aye.
Leanne Stokes,
Aye.
Sean McAllister.
Aye.
Diane Wolf.
Aye.
Larry Jurassic.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Brad, for joining us virtually. And thank you, ISG, for coming in tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your good questions and concern for our community, especially the elders. Okay, that was 10A. Now we're going to hop back up to item 8, which is finance. So I'll turn it over to Leanne Stokes.
Thank you, Mayor. The following is a list of monies expended since the last common council meeting dated June 13th, 2023. In the amount of $2,250,130.26. And I make a motion to approve the voucher of the monies expended since the last common council meeting as of June 13th in the amount of $2,200,130.26.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Leanne Stokes. It's been seconded by Larry Jurassic. Is there any discussion? Stephen Knott.
I just want to clarify what we're voting on is $2,250,130.26.
That is correct.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries unanimously. Item 9 is from the Board of Public Works and Utilities. Alder Knott, take it away.
Yes, so last week, our regularly scheduled Board of Public Works was canceled because was a very light load. The 3 items you're seeing were the entire 3 items that were on it. And it happened to fall on the 4th of July. So we're going to actually be discussing this as a common council here. At this point, I'll turn it over to Jared.
Thank you, Your Honor. Included in your packet is item 9 tonight. With that, that is the right-of-way plat for the Theater Road and PH proposed roundabout project, along with the relocation order. If you go to page 9, or actually it's 8 of the packet, you can see the intersection. You can see where we're purchasing right-of-way. This plan does have 1,836 square feet of new right-of-way proposed to be purchased. Through the design process, we did work to miss both signs. So we are going to miss the Cooley Bank sign and the Wells Fargo sign. So we did, we're able to do that. That was one of our concerns with purchasing of right-of-way for the project. So with that, this is what we had brought forward is what we expected to have during the design. So staff is recommending approval of the right-of-way plat and relocation order so we can start the right-of-way acquisition work for the project.
I move to approve the PH and Theater Road project right-of-way plat and relocation order.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Alder Knott. It's been seconded by Alder Wolf. Is there any discussion? Larry Jurassic and then Dan Stevens next.
On the plat map here, the black dots, are they representing the outer boundary for the
Correct.
circle?
Those would be the outer boundary of the right-of-way to be purchased. So you can see that the right-of-way existing is squares, square corners, and we're going to be rounding those corners.
Okay, so within that area there, that's gonna be the circle. It looks like it's awful small.
The circle is going to be within the middle of the road, the outer lanes. That's what we need to make the circle work.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, this, just to kind of back up, this is the mini roundabout, maybe Jared talked.
Yeah, this will be the mini roundabout version, so it will be bigger than what you see constructed at East Avenue and Riders Club, but smaller than Greens Coulee.
Okay.
Okay, and then Dan Stevens, did you have a question?
Yeah, two questions. So first, I assume there have been no concerns or objections raised by Cooley Bank or Wells Fargo.
No, we have not formally went to those entities because we're waiting to do the right-of-way acquisition process. They get all the proper legal paperwork given to them to start that negotiation. In looking at the areas that are being acquired, that's one of the major reasons that we wanted to miss the signs, because that would be, obviously we would have to pay to move the sign, and also trying to get those reestablished at a location. So I think with what you see today, they're not losing anything that's going to be hurting their property values.
The second question had to do with the short, runway between PH and Highway 16. And you suggested in the past that the state might be amenable to changing the timing of the lights on the Highway 16 Theater Road intersection. Is that any updates on that?
So those signal lights, what really drives those signal lights is keeping the through traffic moving. The left turn traffic, depending on what time of day and where you're at, what time of the year it is even, based upon traffic volumes, is really controlled by the through traffic volumes. So I don't think this project, if we were going to put in a signal light, that's part of the reason we didn't want to put a signal light, because our queuing would back up into the intersection, which would hinder the movement of the through traffic on the highway. But with the roundabout, I think we'll get continuous movement of traffic. And they have modeled that traffic, and they do not show any backups onto Highway 16 by installing of the roundabout.
I use this intersection almost every day, and I have seen times where it's been backed up. So having a roundabout, I'm concerned that might have a spillover effect into.
I think it's actually going to make it better than what you see today. Traffic flow wise, it should make it better.
Jared, what is the construction timeline for this?
That'll all be determined through your capital improvement budget process.
Theoretically,
Probably, it's going to probably end up being 25 because we won't have available funds in the capital improvement budget for 24, knowing what projects we have in that pipeline.
thank you. Stephen Knott?
Yeah, don't know if I might be able to assuage Alder Stevens's concerns. I know it's still an apple to an orange comparison, but when that roundabout went in down at Cooley Golf area,
I had the exact same concern you did because there were two sets of stoplights that were always backed up down there. And as it turns out, it couldn't have been more, well, I won't say wrong. I was concerned over nothing. I mean, it made it better. It made it way better. I was shocked at that. I really thought it was going to back up and it did not. So.
Okay, we're discussing the right-of-way plot and relocation order. Is there any other discussion? The motion on the floor is to approve. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Back to you, Stephen.
We are now on to item 9B, the 2023 Aquatic Center roof replacement bid. I'll turn it back over to Jared again.
Thank you. This is one of the 5 bids that Stephen has on his hand. Because this one actually came in under budget. In your packet tonight, you can see that we did have 4 bidders for the Aquatic Center roof replacement bid. The estimated cost for this project was budgeted at $45,000. We did get the low bid from Lediger Roofing of $32,568.00. And that was a really good bid, competitive bid, and we're very happy with it. Staff's recommending moving forward with that bid.
I'll move to approve the bid by Lediger Roofing for $32,568 for the 2023 Aquatic Center roof replacement.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Stephen Knott. It's been seconded by Larry Jurassic to approve the Aquatic Center roof replacement bid going to Lediger for the amount of $32,568. Any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
And then item 9C, Mayor, is the pay estimates, and you should have a insert in your packet that shows 17 items. And I'll move to approve those pay estimates.
Second.
Okay, thank you for that. We have a motion on the floor. It was made by Stephen Knott. It was seconded by Diane Wolf to approve the 17 pay estimates as listed in our packet. Is there any further discussion? Jared, do you have something to add?
Nope, just moving all 17 of those forward.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Motion on the floor is to approve. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 10 has been covered. Number 11, we'll turn it over to our interim city administrator, Amanda Jackson.
All right, just a couple updates. If you have not heard, the new rocking sunfish will be placed at the Great River Landing Thursday morning at 11 a.m. We invite everyone to come check it out Thursday or over the weekend if you have the time. Big thank you to Oak for their continued passion for art in our community. Strategic planning, Katie and I did meet with Heather Quackenbus and Charlotte Peters from UW Extension to talk about strategic planning. As part of their services, UW Extension does do a lot of outreach to local government communities. One of those such services is strategic planning. And so we invited them to come to the August Council, where they are going to provide sort of some education on the process and what it would look like for the city to tackle sort of revisiting our mission, visions, values, and doing a long-term strategic plan. We think that will be about a 20-minute presentation with around 10 minutes or so of follow-up questions. And so we are looking for that to happen at the August council meeting. We had our comprehensive plan kickoff meeting with the Long Range Plan Commission this past week. If you haven't gotten a chance to check out their website, there is a dedicated website to the comprehensive plan process that will be updated throughout. That is liveona2040.com. And they did a really, really nice job of incorporating our branding into that website. It looks really nice. In fact, because you are stuck listening to me right now and I control the computer, you're just going to get to see it right now. So as you kind of scroll down, it takes you through a welcome and introduction to what the comprehensive plan is. There's Sunny the Sunfish. There's basically an option for people to go in and share your thoughts there. Just sort of very open-ended. What do you love about Onalaska? What would you like to change in the future? You can subscribe to receive updates related to our planning process. So I would encourage all of our council members to do that. And then it will give you notifications of when we're having upcoming events. And then it talks about the different project phases. Obviously, as we dive into these project phases, there'll be more. But for now, it just sort of describes what each project phase is for anyone that is interested. There is a map of the city and a lovely quote from Mayor Smith about how great Onalaska is. And then as we create documents and we, start to build up that plan, we'll have those loaded on here as well. But you are all invited to go subscribe and to flag that in your browser for future use. Website kickoff. We have all kinds of kickoffs going on right now. So we are going to have a kickoff meeting for our website tomorrow early afternoon with Revise. I don't have a lot of details on that, but we're hoping that we'll get that out of that meeting. And so Dan, Joe and I think are going to sit in on that meeting. Katie was going to, but she's, I think, out doing something else at that time. But we are looking at, it sounds like still on the line to probably wrap that up and have the new website in place by January of 2024. But I'll probably know more about that next month. And then last, I've been busy meeting with department heads over this week and next week, and we are doing mid-year goal check-ins just to make sure that everyone is on target to meet their goals for the year and that they have the tools and resources necessary to do so. The only update I have that I didn't make on the list and thought of as sort of an after is we have a vacancy in our human resources department that is putting a fair amount of burden on that department. We did look at the possibility of hiring a temp worker with the vacated wages from that position. We ended up actually deciding to hire an intern. And so we are going to have an intern starting hopefully here by the end of July. There is credit involved with this as well. And so the intern would be working through the end of December. And so the benefit of that versus the temp was that we are going to get that person for longer, hopefully provide educational value and likely a lower cost for more hours worked. So Amy, I think, is particularly excited to have somebody in there giving her some help here shortly. And then we do have that position closing here at the end of the month. And so hopefully we'll get that position filled shortly.
Is that a paid?
We are paying. That is sort of the way of the world now. Gone are those days where we could just get people for credit for a lot of types of, there's a few left that you can get somebody for credit, but no, I think that's something that as a city we're going to have to look at is those kids want to be paid. So, all right, let's talk about art. So we surveyed the public based on, as you all recall, a survey that we sort of did internally. And those results are right here. So kind of the primary role of art in public spaces. So overwhelmingly, the answers to that were to beautify, to inspire creativity, and to support artists. Coming in not too far behind that is create neighborhood identity, tourism, and community development, and then economic development and social change were very kind of low on the list, but definitely beautify, as you'll see, 117, 89% was sort of the number one feeling of the community. In which places would you like to see art? Select all that apply. We gave people a lot of broad choices. And so interestingly, parks, and not surprisingly, was number one. Plazas, which some people do consider to be parks, came in sort of number two. Our examples were like Dash Park and the Great River Landing. The city library was a strong choice. City Hall and Omni Center, the community center, and then sort of down our city boulevards, businesses, waysides, unexpected places, aquatic center, neighborhoods. And then really not super popular choices were underpasses, vacant lots, well houses and lift stations, and the city cemetery. So definitely sort of city facilities and parks and plazas were people's main choice there. So this was sort of an open-ended spot, if you could pick your top place in the city to put new art in a public place, where would it be? We had a surprising amount of people pick City Hall. Dash Park, as you can see, is another pretty popular one. The Great River Landing is one of the most popular ones. Library, sort of that Main Street downtown area. We're all sort of kind of the more popular ones. Parks in general. Row Park specifically got called out quite a bit as far as particular parks. And a surprising amount of people sort of said somewhere unexpected or, you know, somewhere unique. Question 4, if you remember, was we did a question with pictures that we had used from actually the city of Boulder. We did modify those sort of to include some Onalaska design. So number 1, at 82.3% was parklands and playscapes. And the vision for that was that sort of moving pergola at Dash Park. So that was the number 1 choice. The number 2 choice, which was not a picture locally, was that sort of earthworks and environmental art. And I can't unfortunately blow these up for you, but if you kind of remember, that was sort of a sidewalk. I don't know if that helps or not. Sort of like a spinning sidewalk with like, I think it was like maybe a small fountain in the middle, but it just sort of gave visual appeal to like a walking space. And was sort of built into the landscape. And then number 3 was signature art. For signature art, we did show the Great River Landing artwork down there, the statue down there. And then our 4th choice was murals. And we just got kind of our first mural installed here by Oak. We did use a mural from downtown La Crosse as representation of something that would be recognizable locally. And that came in just behind that signature artwork. Kind of on the lower end were streetscapes, architecturally integrated artwork, which would be more like inside of a city facility, social practice projects, neighborhood interventions, and then media projects or like temporary projects or performances, which would be like that street art category more so. And then our last question, which was, should the city fund public art? And that actually came back with almost 70% of people saying yes. So 67.69% of people said yes, that the city should fund public art, and 32% said no. So what we would like to do as staff is sort of take this information and work over the next couple of months to come up with a new ordinance that is similar in nature to our mural ordinance, in that it's going to set standards for public art. It's going to, you know, have standards that are different for public versus private public art. And then sort of guide you as to, for instance, it may go city facility by city facility, or it may sort of say zone A. For instance, if you want to have a playscape, here are all the places in the city where you could do a playscape. You could do it in Row Park, you could do it at Community Park, you could do it in all of these city facilities. If you want to do a mural, here's all the city properties where the city thinks a mural would be a great idea. If you want to put in a statue, here's all the parks where the city thinks it would be a great idea to do a statue, and sort of go through those like top art choices and give people a guide to where in the city that art likely would work, and sort of simplify the process for these organizations that want to do art in our city. And so they can come in, they can make an application, they know where they can put a project based on the type of project, and where it best fits into the city. And it sort of takes away, I think, some of the confusion with the process that we have right now, which is not really a process at all. And so would have a very clear like path for them to follow? What are the requirements? Do you have to give it to the city? I think the expectation would be if you're making art and you're putting it in a public property, we may require that you give it to the city because there's insurance reasons to do that. If you're going to do it on public or private property, there would be different requirements. And so I think what I am proposing is that we as staff would work on sort of a rough draft of that. It is going to take us some time. This is not a easy ordinance to write. But that we would come back this fall with sort of the guts of what an ordinance like that would look like. And then council could give us feedback. And I'm not even saying like we would vote on it that day. It would just be, here's what we're proposing. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. And then hopefully by the end of the year, maybe we could get an ordinance on the book related to art.
Okay, thank you for that, Amanda. Are you looking for a motion or what do you hope to find here?
I mean, I don't know if we need a motion, but I think like a head nod, like, yes, go do that. I don't want to waste a ton of, I mean, this will be a pretty staff intensive project. So if we're not sort of in alignment with that's a good way to do this, then I don't want to waste that time.
Okay, comments from the council?
I think the process is good. It, for no other reason than it kind of gives a guide to artists who do want to do something for the city, that gives them a process how to do it.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we end up with a catch-22 where people want to do something, they're trying to figure out what to do, and then we're not sure if we want them to do it or not because we don't know what it is, or, you know, it's just like a lot of vagueness to our process. So I think it will help to have some definitions of what the expectations are on both sides and that we can hold ourselves accountable to those expectations as well. And that'll probably promote more potential artwork in our community because people will know what the process is. Anyone else? Diane?
Thank you, Your Honor. So I had been holding on to a memo from December 6th from Katie and Dan, and it was talking about at that time about locating art. And I know that what you just presented today was kind of like a spinoff from that. One thing that I kind of liked was one of the city staff's recommendation was that, and it really folds into exactly what you were saying, Amanda, but just a little bit more detail that I would just ask for city staff to consider, including city staff to produce a formal policy with details related to art donations, loaned art, safety, insurance, technical requirement, maintenance, and removal. It's just a few extra little stuff that, you know, however you all think you should include. Thank you.
Okay, so for lack of everyone being very talkative, how about if you don't want staff to work on this, now is the time to say. Dan.
All right. I know a lot of work has gone into this from staff side, and I know the art community appreciates staff kind of reaching their hand out to try to work with the art community. I do believe the council has seriously offended the art community, and they are a little gun shy about going forward. An example would be at the June meeting, there was a motion to it basically said the placement of art should be staff's responsibility. And I think they could have gone along with that, okay, but then they specifically cited the place that they wanted as not to be the place where it was. And the community really kind of took that as almost like, you know, giving them the proverbial finger. So I just think you have to be careful. And I think staff has really done a good job at trying to work with the art community. But when you have volunteer organizations that are trying to do good, I think we have to be, I would prefer to let staff handle everything and take it out of the hands of council. So setting up guidelines that would work well within the city, that would be, I would advocate for making it not political.
Okay, thank you for that. Anyone else? Okay, I think we're good. Are you good, Amanda? All right, item 12, closed session To consider a motion to convene in closed session under section 19.85, paragraph 1, paragraph E of the Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting of other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, specifically Onalaska School District property in French Valley. Also, to consider a motion to convene in closed session under section 19.85 1C of the Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of considering employment promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, specifically the contract for the city administrator. If any action is required in open session as a result of the closed session, the council will reconvene in open session to take the necessary action and or continue on with the printed agenda. Do we have a motion?
I move to go to closed session.
A second.
We have a motion by Alder Stephen Knott. It's been seconded by Alder Larry Jurassic to go into closed session. The voting to do this will be by roll call.
Diane Wolf,
Aye.
Dan Stevens,
Aye.
Stephen Knott,
Aye.
Sean McAllister, Larry Jurassic.
Aye.
Leanne Stokes.
Aye.
Thank you. The voting was unanimous. We are in closed session. The time is 9 p.m. I've had a request that we do the contract for city administrator item first. So Sean could
I
leave. Okay,
Would like to not make Dan stay if, I mean, I don't think the first
it'll
item
be super short.
will be particularly long.
Okay. All right. Do we need a short break or are we okay to continue on for the moment? Let's get the first one done if we're going to do it that way.
And then we could take a break after the first one. 'cause we've been
Okay.
here for 2 hours.
We'll do the first one and then we'll take a short break and we'll do the second one so we can switch our people around. So, yeah, thanks. Well,
And then you're.
that was why, okay. Amanda, does Sean need to leave right now?
Yes.
Okay.
We are gonna kick Sean out briefly.
An awkward situation.
And I'm going to rest them. Okay.
Will you give this to Joanne as you pass her?